Today I want to look at variables. Variables are an important part in any computer program because they are used to store information. The computer is not like us. If we need to remember something, we just commit it to our memory. We don't have to tell it how to store it, where to store it. But the computer is not that intelligent. It needs to know more information. It needs to know, first of all, what type of information do you want to store? The computer has various types. Probably the most common is a string, called a string because it stores a string of characters, what we would call words or sentences. So if we want to store words, we need a string, but if we only want to store one letter, we use a char. If we want numbers, again, there are lots of different choices. Probably the most common is integer, which stores a whole number, or in C#, it's just called an int. Other types are single, double, decimal, boolean, date, image, all of which are different types of information. The reason the computer needs to know what type of information we want to store, or type of data we want to store, is because it needs to know how much space to set aside in memory. So, in this program, I'm going to want to store somebody's name, so I'm going to need to store a string. So, first thing I do is tell it I want to store a string. The next thing I have to do is say what name I want to use to refer to that piece of information that's being stored. And in this case, I want to store a first name, so I'm going to call mine first name. The words first name mean nothing special to the computer. It has no concept of what a first name is. Notice the way that I've put the variable name or the variable identifier without a space. It's what we call camel case, using a capital letter for the start of each word, but no spaces in between. And that brings us to the rules for naming a variable. Number 1, it has to be a single word, and number 2, it can't start with a number. I can end the statement there and just put a semicolon to say that's it, I want a string that I'm going to call first name. Or I can set a default value and say currently it has nothing in it. Notice the way nothing for a string is just 2 sets of speech marks back to back. Or I can actually set a default value that if they don't give me a name, I'm going to call them Fred. Or I'm just going to set it to not set. And that will just store whatever I put in those speech marks in first name for now. The whole statement, by the way, is called a declarative statement because it declares a variable. The string on the front is the data type. First name is the variable identifier. This is the default value, and in this case, the words not set are what are called a literal string. They're the exact words not set. So this line of code is going to display the words enter your name on the screen. Notice it does nothing more than that. It just displays those words. It has no idea what those words mean. The key point of the process is this one, the words console read line. It's the console read line that sits and waits for the user to type something in. And it's on this line that I need to say, whatever the user does type in, can you store that information in first name? And to do that, I would add first name equals to the front of that line. Notice you read this line as first name becomes console.readline. So you put into first name whatever the user types in at the read line instruction. Once I've done that, I need to do something with the first name. Console.writeLine will display something on the screen, and what I want to display on the screen are the words welcome, followed by the first name that they typed in. And finally, so I have time to see that message appear on the screen, I'm going to do a console.readLine. Also, I want a gap between this information and that information, so I'm just going to add another console.writeLine instruction in there. But I'm not going to put anything inside the brackets. That'll just give me a blank line on the computer screen. Now I'm going to hit the start to show you what this program will now do. It's important to notice that it takes a long time for this start button to work because the computer is having to convert all of these high-level instructions into machine code so that it knows how to do them. It uses an interpreter to do that. I want to show you these two next to each other so you can see that actually this string first name equals not set didn't have any effect on anything that appeared in the console. This happens behind the scenes. This creates space in the computer's memory, it labels that space first name, and it puts the words not set into that space. The first thing that appears on the screen is this console write line to say enter your name. Notice the blank line in between here had no effect on the screen either. They're just put in to break the program up so that we can find it easier to read. It's nothing to do with what appears on the screen. So now my program is sat there flashing at the cursor, waiting for me to do something. And it's the console read line that gets this to sit here flashing, waiting for me to type something in. So if I type in my first name, again, nothing happens because I haven't actually pressed the return or the enter at the end of the line. It's only when I press the return or the enter that the name I type in will get stored in the variable first name. Now we get a blank line appearing here, and that blank line occurred because of this console write line instruction. And finally, it then says welcome because of this write line instruction, followed by the name I typed in. And again, the cursor is sat there, flashing on the screen because of this console read line instruction, which is saying wait for the user to type something in. And if I do type something in, or just press return, then my program will stop. Before I finish, I just want to remind you of some technical terms. First name is a variable identifier, the name I will call my variable in my program. The string at the start of that statement is a data type. It tells me what type of data I'm going to store in first name, and therefore how much space the computer needs to allocate to first name in its memory. Not set is a literal string, and it's a literal string because it's in speech marks. And it's going to be the default value of first name. One new term to learn. If I take one string like this, welcome, and the second string like this, first name, and I add them together. That is called concatenation, very often shortened to concat.